1091, greetings, kings and queens. We are here on Gotkush TV, soon to be known as Kimbunga Media, and I have a very special guest, you know. A very, very special guest, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And a sister who's doing some significant works in our community, documenting the stories of our elders and our ancestors, brothers and sisters. And she's doing some extremely important work. And when we didn't know about it, we just have to arrange, yeah, to speak to her, yeah. So Selena is, what do you call yourself again?
I'm a cultural and ancestral genealogist.
Cultural and ancestral genealogist, kings and queens. That she depend, yeah? So, first of all, let's explain what that is. What is a cultural and ancestral genealogist?
So, the work that I do around genealogy is beyond looking at mum and dad, grandma, granddad, and the tiers of family that we may not know about. It's looking at our cultural influences, where our parents are coming from, where we're growing up, what we have access to, the foods we're eating, the medicines that we've got access to, the kind of cultural, cosmopolitan creation of looking at, you know, when we talk about either blackness or whiteness or Asian, is to be able to look at that from every individual who's looking back, their understanding of their present, but being able to draw things from the past culturally and ancestrally.
Beautiful. All right, we can get more into what that entails technically speaking, yeah. But let's get to why we are here today.
Okay.
And then maybe we'll come back to that. So there's a very important project that you're dealing with that to me is very special to me as a Garvey here, which is that you are returning the death certificate of the most Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey to his homeland of Jamaica.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, right? How did that even come about? What even brought that about? You know what I mean?
Is it last year? I think it's last year. I met Dr. Julius Garvey
at
Liberty Hall,
the second son
of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And when I met him, he's embarking on a project called Marcus Garvey in Schools to be able to start delivering the philosophies and opinions. And when I was speaking to him about the work that I have been doing, so, you know, I do Black Poppy Roads as well. And I was talking to him about the influence through the cultural and ancestral realm that I work in, and how I've been able to get access to get certain opportunities to be able to promote this work in our communities. And he asked me to start looking into his mother's family tree. And as a result of looking into his mother's family tree, I then thought to myself, oh, have you seen your dad's death certificate? He said no. I said, I'll get that for you, sir. Okay. And indeed I did.
How did you go about getting it?
So Marcus Garvey died here.
Yes.
And as a result, his death certificate is a part of public records in this country. And as a result of working with Dr. Julius Garvey, me and my business partner, Toya Williams, we are his official genealogist. So we now have access to look for records on his behalf as the son
as effectively the next of kin.
That's right.
Because I was wondering, because everybody knows that Marcus Garvey passed away here. It never occurred to me that his death certificate would still be here. Partly because we know that his body was returned in the 1960s. So I would have just assumed that with that transition, the death certificate would have gone with the remains. So how is it that I don't know if you can even answer this question, but how is it that it remained here, and why is it that nobody, I suppose you would have had to have next of kin rights to be able to access it anyway, but do you know why it was never sought after?
So I'm gonna take us on a journey as to what it could look like. So anywhere you die, the death is registered in that country. The registration is permanently found in that country. So it will be here forever. Getting a certified copy is something that would have been passed on to the next of kin. And then as a result, they would have done what they needed to do, but at the time, there was no next of kin here. So there was Marcus Garvey's secretary and a few people who was working with who was here, but they couldn't really handle his affairs. So although they were able to bury him, there wasn't much more that could be done, and we was in World War II. So they weren't repatriating bodies, and Amy Jakes couldn't get here. And then we look at the politics around Amy Ashwood Garvey and Amy Jakes Garvey and the illegitimization of the divorces, and then we also look at the political aspect of being able to send Marcus back because of the political upheaval that wasn't wanted at the time. You know, there was a lot of politicizations, and then the family thing is that the family never came back to England. So the sons went to Canada and America. Amy stayed in Jamaica, and the work was very much from that area of the world. And I don't think unless a family member goes to look for it, it's really gonna find it. That's right. It's not really something that people are going to be thinking, oh, let me go and. So when it then came to me working with Dr. Julius about his father, it then dawned on me that there are maybe many aspects of history that we look at that we're not able to look at a little bit more because we're not connected in that way.
Interesting, powerful story, and it's a lesson in terms of what I always say as somebody who deals with Pan-African history, that when our leaders die, and a lot of the time they die in tragic circumstances, but we often forget that they have families and they leave behind families, right? And so when we tell the story, we often don't look at, well, what happened to the father, the mother, the wife, the husband, the son, the daughter after. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a serious thing, and that it's something that I've taken time to do with various different leaders, Patrice Lumumba, Medai and Kimati, of course, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Honourable Malcolm X. There's so many, do you know what I'm saying? And I applaud the work that you're doing here, because it's very meaningful, So I don't know, in terms of now tracking down the death certificate, you were acting on behalf of Dr. Julius Garvey, the son. Is there anything that was uncovered as a part of your process, that was of particular interest? One of the reasons why I asked is because I know in your press release you speak about the fact that it's properly understood that Papa Garvey died of a stroke and the loss of a number of strokes. And that's what is that confirmed on the death certificate, for example?
So the stroke is not confirmed on the death certificate. Right. So Marcus Garvey had 2 strokes.
Yes.
And was potentially paralyzed.
Yes.
After the second one. Mm-hmm. And although he was still
working.
Right. And the difference, and there's a big difference between nerve damage.
Yes.
And heart damage.
Right.
And although they're connected, and a lot of things are connected, people just accept certain things. And I think within a lot of our history, there's a lot of things that are just accepted.
Okay.
And we run with that.
Right.
Because some of us don't have access.
Yes.
And there's again, everything is political. But the thing that dawned on me when I saw the death certificate is that it was written he died of cardiac failure due to hypertension.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And that is very, very clear, very specific. Okay. And although his strokes may have triggered that, that's not what it says.
On the death certificate.
Okay. And then when we've got books, and when we have articles, and when we have movies, and when we have documentaries, none of them state he died of cardiac failure due to hypertension. Okay. And I think that is very important.
Very important. Yeah.
Because when we're looking at the levels of Marcus Garvey's achievement, especially in why in 2024, 110 years later from the formation of the UNIA, we're still talking about the principles, the politics, the understandings of self-identity, that's significant for us to learn, especially those of us who are out there as activists, or those of us who are trying to ensure that a universal perspective of oneness is understood. It's important to look at the medical issues that are impacting our leaders. Because we know many of them were poisoned, we know many of them were, we know so many of that. Absolutely. And for our first national hero of Jamaica to not have that, for me, didn't give me a sense of kind of finalization to be able to look at what did it cost? What did it cost Marcus Garvey to endure everything that we've read, everything Tony Martin has written, everything that Robert A. Hill's put into, what did he have to endure? His children were unwell, they had to go back home, all of those things.
Of course.
Traveling the world, the leaders, this, that, and all the other, and everybody's concepts, not everybody not being quite where he was, things like that. What did it cost him? Right, because, he had the strokes.
Yes, sir.
And then he died of cardiac failure due to hypertension. I think in all of our learnings, that would have been very, very important to have that kind of
full story.
Right. And then that continuation of his son then going on to be a cardiologist, in alignment. And then he's only learning this at 90 years old.
Right.
So then when we're talking about what does that mean for him, he feels even more connected to his father because he's chosen a path that's gone on to save lives because he couldn't for his father. You understand? And so when you see me getting excited.
It's very important.
And for our first national hero, because although he's not our biological father, grandfather, whatever we're going to call it,
Papa Garvey,
right,
out of the way.
And to be able to know that and to be able to start being able to get others who have never even heard of the work, because there are some people who've never heard of or don't understand how they're impacted, or they can talk to you about Martin Luther King, they don't know the impact, they can sing Bob Marley songs, they don't know the impact, they don't know all of these things that we're now connected to that are at our reach, that is influenced by Marcus Mosiah Garvey. That's the kind of thing that the death certificate really brought
much appreciated, and it's important for what you're saying, because one of the things that I learned when we did Licken, when we had there many, as we say, is that when he died in a bed with like all of his work just around him. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like he literally passed away doing the work. Yeah. It's I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Them things there stayed with me, the thing that I learned, you know, how committed the man was. Yeah. And I was reading Philosophy and Opinions the other day, and in volume 2, they got a letter from Papa Garvey to Amy Jakes Garvey. He's basically saying, well, I'm entrusting these documents to you, knowing that we know I can do the right thing with them, right? I have the utmost faith, yeah? And there's a letter from her afterwards that's typed, and she's basically saying, you know, like, it is my honor basically to serve one and do work on behalf of one who is 100% committed to the people, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like the level of understanding that they had, you know, between each other in terms of what their respective missions were, is admirable, you know. So I don't know. It's a bit of a surreal one in the sense of like I said, not knowing for this length of time that this aspect of the thing hadn't been resolved, right? Yeah. You know, and then so we're returning it now back to Mama Jamaica, yeah. But when I just take it go on Mama Jamaica now, you know, there's specific things where I go on, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So when I go give it to Andrew Holness, yeah. You know what I'm saying? And all these things, right? You know, when I go give it to, you know what I mean? So what exactly are you doing with the birth certificate?
So I'm bringing back 2 certified copies.
Right.
So it's important to say the certified part.
Yes.
Because you can't just get anything.
I said, did I say birth certificate? I meant
no. You did say the certificate, but
okay.
It's certified. So the certified one, because you know when you go to RGD in Jamaica,
of course,
you have to get a certified. Yes. You can't just go on family search
and
just take off.
Certified.
It has to be certified.
Right,
I'm taking back 2 certified copies.
Okay.
And I'll be donating one to Liberty Hall, because Liberty Hall are the custodians of Marcus Garvey's legacy, and they are pivotal in ensuring that his legacy and his work is preserved.
Just to explain, for those who may not be aware, Liberty Hall is basically any headquarters of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League in any city was called Liberty Hall. That was the headquarters, yeah? And so basically, the people at Liberty Hall have continued the Liberty Hall tradition, but specifically in preserving the legacy of Papa Garvey and the UNIA ACO. They have a library there, they have exhibits there, and you can just go, it's a center of learning basically about the most honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So they're really the custodians of that legacy in Jamaica as it stands. But go ahead, so I didn't want to interrupt you.
That's all right. And they have one of the only multimedia centres in the Caribbean, and that especially is dedicated to Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Absolutely.
And the death certificate will be situated there, so the public, when they come, will be able to have access to another record that is connected to him. Okay. But I'm also donating a certified copy to the National Library of Jamaica, because the National Library also has works to do with Marcus Garvey, but it then connects the wider audience that is connected or interconnected to Marcus Garvey. So with the work that I'm doing, I'm connecting other families and their genealogies of people who would have grandfathers or great-grandfathers who worked alongside or with Marcus Garvey and have those memories in their families to be able to keep documenting them and have a crossover link between the two of sharing information. Okay,
interesting. And so in terms of now working with those 2 institutions, what are the plans for, if you can answer this, what are the plans for broader, work surrounding this event, and, what are they doing with this event and the resources that they have at their disposal in terms of developing education and or whatever around Papa Garvey himself?
So with Liberty Hall, they already have their programs and they already have a lot of their creative outputs readily available. So with what I'm doing with Dr. Julius Garvey is I'm providing another genealogical spin on what we're looking at. For instance, I recently found letters that Marcus Garvey was sending back to Dr. Julius. So Dr. Julius's pet name was Chubby. So he would write Dear Chubby or Dear Marcus Jr., so there are letters between them. So we are talking about whether or not he remembers these letters, because remember he's 90 and these letters when he was a smart. So just looking
he was born in 1933, I believe, 1933.
So he died when his dad passed away when he was 7
years old.
And again, when it comes to genealogy, you never know what people are going to remember, especially when they're 90, especially when you've got time. So we're trying to just make sure we've got the time to be able to go back a decade at a time, because it takes time.
Yes.
But there are some things that I'm hoping that they might be able to trigger some sort of memory, but you can't know.
Yes.
But in a lot of the letters, it always talks about Marcus Garvey sending money back to his children.
Yeah.
Every letter says, I have sent this for you. And then you look at the crossover of the outstanding bills that were not being paid in England. But yet it was the priority to make sure that his children were also being
financially taken
care of from here to be able to assist them in their own development.
Absolutely.
So that's the aspect that I'm bringing to both areas of Liberty Hall and the National Library of Jamaica. That again, that familyness, to be able to then encourage Jamaica and Jamaicans to look at that familyness of themselves. Because if we're not documenting our family histories, our migrations, whether or not we stayed, where we've been, all of that is pivotal to understanding who we are and where we are and how we relate to the philosophies and opinions.
Of course.
So when we're talking about Windrush, or when we're talking about Bumidon, for people who don't know about the Bumidon, this was the French occupation, just like we had the Windrush ship coming one time, it came one time. The Bumidon also took place in the same way of West Indians from France going over to rebuild France. And I think it ended in 82. It did end in 82. So from the 60s, from the 1960s to 1982, and then we have Windrush from 1948 to 1971. But we have a lot of crossover histories.
100%. And we're going to bring you back for talk about them something, because what you just said is very important in terms of connecting our diaspora histories, because we forget, especially as the English-speaking Caribbean, that there's a whole French-speaking Caribbean, and a lot of those moved to France and Paris, and then they also met brothers and sisters from French-speaking Africa that moved to France and Paris and the rest of the cities in France, So the similarities are very much there, and because I'm working with brothers and sisters who are in France at the moment, you're learning certain things, and so we have to connect up those you know what I'm saying. Wait, say your name again, like a cultural what?
Cultural and ancestral
genealogist, brothers and sisters. You have to know these things. Go ahead.
Because with family, we're also looking at family politics,
right?
And everything is political.
Of course.
Everything is political. You've
heard that before if you got Push TV, but
and when we're looking at time periods and we're looking at influences, we can talk about Leninism and Trotskyism, Maoism, Stalinism, Garveyism was it? All of them were inspiring one another. Right. All of them. Every socialism, whatever it is.
No, it's true.
And I think when we're coming from this is why I come from it from a cultural and ancestral perspective. Because in that time period where the UNIA was formed in 1914, just before World War I, you also have men like John Archer already being first black mayor in this country and moving with the African Progress Union and things like that. So you've got movements coming up at the same time. You've got W.E.D. Du Bois already coming here doing a race conference before the Pan-African Congress, because the conference was 1900. You've got the 1900s, and we're looking at men, and this is not to take away from women, this is not to overshadow, this is not to this is not it, right? But we've got men of African understandings, whether or not from the continent, from the West Indies, whichever colony you're coming from, leading in a particular way and ensuring that their people's visibilities is out there. And you have a Frenchman called Blaise Dion, and he was the first African man to be elected into Parliament. And the reason why he was elected is because he was fighting for sovereignty for regions in French colonial Africa. And, he was mobilizing men to fight in the First World War. But this is the same way where Marcus Garvey was saying to men all over the world, if the white man and the Asian man are sending their men and we don't send our men, what happens to our men?
Real talk. There's so much history, and that was even with dealing with that war history and how we end up in their armies, and generally, as with my revolutionary sensibilities, the fireborn fighting in their army, fire, lightning, earthquake, and thunder. No apology for that.
That's right.
But I always say, before we analyze and critique our ancestors, we must understand the options and that were at their disposal and the decisions that they made. And for many of our ancestors who fought in the French army, the American army, the British army, a lot of them felt that it was a way station for acquiring greater independence, sovereignty, autonomy. So once we serve in this way, we will receive. And oftentimes that never happened. And which, Garvey himself got to a point whereby he said, listen, we should not be fighting in these white man's wars. You know what I'm saying? So but our ancestors made different decisions at different points. I want to just touch on this thing that you brought though about family. Because again, I'm very interested in the family life of our leaders, male or female. And I love the point that you made in terms of the extent to which he was still caring for his children And we know if you study the life of Papa Garvey and Mama Amy Jakes Garvey, we know that they had difficulties in their relationship around this time, which is a part of the thing, right? You know what I'm saying? But the point that I just want to highlight the point that you said, that regardless of whatever was going on, we know that he was in financial straits at this point. Mama Amy Jakes was in financial straits, but he was continuing to send money for his children, yeah? And so we have to remember that Papa Garvey was a husband and that he was a father, yeah? You know what I'm saying? We have to remember these things.
And an uncle.
And an uncle, yes, this is true.
Yep.
Yeah, his niece, Ruth Prescott, was alive speaking about him until her twilight years, you know what I'm saying? So that was Ruth Prescott is the daughter of Papa Garvey's sister, Indiana. Yeah, so we just want to highlight all these names. Good touch of raising that. So it's important work. So we're bringing the death certificate back. We're returning the death certificate back, and there are programs around the bringing of the death certificate back to Jamaica. There is a significant issue, and you just said about Dr. Julius Garvey trying to get Marcus Garvey's work in schools, programs. Now that's been an ongoing conversation since Medai there, Medai once again, Like I've never not known the conversation of why is it that in Jamaica the first national hero is not sufficiently taught in the education system from primary to university. There is a course in university, but it's not like a mainstream course. I think it was began by Rupert Lewis, Dr. Rupert Lewis at the University of the West Indies, but that was off of his own initiative. But what can you say to us, based upon your work with Dr. Julius Garvey, about where that program is at the moment? What's going to happen? What are the plans for infusing Papa Garvey into the education system?
Well, at the moment, they have pilot programs going on in, I think, 11 to 15 primary schools.
Right.
And they're looking at how the pilot is adaptable to the climate that we're living in today. And it's very much about looking at economics, it's very much looking about education, it's very much looking about political and the politicization of one's identity.
Yes.
So we're just looking at how we nurture our young minds to understand and have an idea about who they want to be and how they strive for that using the opportunities that are available and the arenas that may be created or may be accessible to them within their different provinces.
Beautiful. Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. I'm doing some work on what I call scientific Garveyism at the moment, so we're going to look at that and analyze it as well within the context of updating the life and legacy and the political ideology that is often referred to as Garveyism, because that's what you have to do. Our ancestors are not just to be read or studied, but we have to look at how we bring them alive, and their work alive in today's world. So as a cultural and ancestral genealogist, we like them title there, them serious title, so she important when she have a title like that, you know what I mean? Ancestral and cultural genealogist, Now we know, as you mentioned, that most people would know you from Black Poppy Rose, and is this work in line with Black Poppy Rose work? Okay, and so because most of the people that know Black Poppy Rose, we know that you're dealing mostly with veterans. Okay. Yeah, is that the case, or am I misleading the people?
No, it's a portion.
Right.
Because being a cultural and ancestral genealogist.
Excuse me.
Okay. I'm also a global war heritage specialist.
Right.
And that allows me to talk about wars that take us back to the 16th century.
Okay.
So we're able to talk about Queen Nzinga. We're able to talk about Nani. We're able to talk about Bookman Dotti. We're able to talk about Haitian Revolution. And then we're able to take the wars back to Thaplos III and the wars around just looking at warfare and understanding the notion that warfare has always existed.
Yes.
And this concept of war and peace isn't something that is simple to say we want peace because there is war.
Yes.
War has always been a part of our histories. And the reason why the cultural and ancestral part comes into it is because our families have always been imbued and intertwined with warfare. Whether or not we've been holding guns, whether or not it's chemical warfare, physical warfare, mental warfare, I look at the principles of Nelly Fuller Jr. And how those areas that we're impacted by, and all of that at the end, it's war accountable. So if you don't know, it's education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, sex,
economics,
religion, war accountable.
Yes.
And the last part, because when you're looking at it, that's 9 areas. they're all intertwined, but because of my interest, I chose the war and counter war.
Right.
Because, it's war. Everything war. My ancestry Jamaica, and I grew up with reggae, most music's about war. War, everything war.
Of course.
And when we're looking at the Maroons war, we're looking at warfare and even fighting for freedom.
Yeah.
The concept of freedom.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
The concept of freedom.
Absolutely.
When we're looking at that, I thought it was important for us to have a symbol that allows us to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because what I have seen in our communities, we're doing great work. We don't have enough visibility in regards that can connect us. Saying we're black isn't enough. Saying we're African isn't enough, because it means different things to different people at different times. And all of these labels that we now continue to have means different things at different times. But one thing that is consistent is location. And if we can be unified on understanding that we are talking about a particular location, a particular time, then the nuanced variables of our experiences through our cultural genealogy will allow us to be able to understand, a greater sphere of why we're in what we're in at the moment, why spiritually we're still fighting, why economically we're still fighting, why, all of the areas why we're still fighting. And although we have the ideas of wanting it, we've never seen unity. We've never seen these things that we're calling for. And it's not to say that we cannot manifest them, but you cannot manifest what you do not truly believe in, that you truly don't see. And even with Marcus Garvey's work and having, however many millions of people involved in an organization, there's still millions of individuals coming together to understand an ideology that essentially they grow out of, or they don't believe in, or their circumstances change. Because within the time period, we've had 2 world wars. Then we had a global Cold War. Then we had wars in Asia, Korea, Vietnam. So there's a lot of things going, a lot of things happening that have changed people's perspectives about what they can do, who they are, and what they can access. So with the work that I'm doing on both sides with the cultural ancestral genealogy and the war, is to be able to give us an understanding and a presence in a time that we've often removed ourselves from, because we don't know how to identify with the feelings that come with knowing that we have done certain things or we have made certain choices. So it's to be able to just give us kind of a space that we can exist in together, take what we need and go and do what you have to do.
It's interesting because I was interviewing another genealogist the other day, you and I, who lives in Sierra Leone, Chief Fode. Brothers and sisters may have seen that interview, but he was detailing one of the stories of one of his ancestors who fought in the Civil War, but he basically engaged in an act of rebellion against the Union Army. So engaged in an act of rebellion against the Union Army in relation to the treatment of the black soldiers, particularly the Gullah Geechee soldiers, during the American Civil War. And so his journey for finding the story of his own ancestor was leading him to ask questions like, well, what would Juneteenth mean? Because it was all around, he done his research around Juneteenth mean to those ancestors who were rebelling against the Union Army at that point, right? And he's not even arguing that we shouldn't celebrate Juneteenth. He's just saying we have to ask that question, right? Look at the stories and place, ourselves in those circumstances and understand where our ancestors were coming from, and use that to inform, where we are today.
Absolutely.
So Selena, what I mean? It's been a beautiful one. I don't even want to long it out too much. I want to give people what it is. But let's just say this: are you gonna be filming whatever you're going to be doing in Jamaica? Okay, cool. And so we're going to try and at least profile it, and so give our audience a snippet of what is actually taking place there. Unfortunately, brothers and sisters, we can't jump in our suitcase, you know what I'm saying, and take the trip with that, you know what I mean, this time around, next time. I did ask, you know what I'm saying, but there's no space on the suitcase, So next time we'll negotiate that. But just to say, we want to thank you, for giving us your time. Thank you for doing this work, for honouring the most honourable Mark of Mosiah Garvey in this way, for honouring the family, that's very important, in this way, and continue doing the work that you're doing, my sister. You are appreciated and valued as a cultural, ancestral genealogist in our community. Brothers and sisters, we've been speaking to Selena Carty, Black Puffy Rose, cultural and ancestral genealogist. Do stay tuned for more to Kimbunga Media on this particular story and so much more to do with the cultural and ancestral genealogy of African people, particularly as it relates to our sojourn in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. See you next time. Tendam Wani.